And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, no. If the rise of RFK epitomizes post-COVID politics, then why are the WEF still trying to implement mass global vaccinations? Hello there, you Awakening Wonders. Thanks for joining me today for Stay Free with Russell Brand. Remember, if you become a member on Rumble Premium, you get access to additional content like my conversations with the likes of Tucker Carlson and Wes Huff and Lily Phillips. You get to join me for extraordinary live experiences, as well as getting an ad-free experience over on Rumble. If there is one beneficiary of the kind of epochal shifts that took place during the pandemic era, it's Bobby Kennedy, who went from being a maligned marginal figure, potentially to the absolute upper echelons of government. The world's changed radically during the pandemic era. More people are cynical about the objectives and agenda of Big Pharma. Less people trust the government. Less people trust media. More people see how these various entities operate in cooperation with one another to bring about centralized systems of power and corruption. Piers Morgan spoke to Tucker Carlson about this subject. Let's have a look at how Piers Morgan has shifted his perspective, and then we'll look at figures like Scott Gottlieb, former head of the FDA and now Pfizer board member, who when he shows up on legacy media is introduced as, you guessed it, former head of the FDA Scott Gottlieb, not current board member at Pfizer Scott Gottlieb. So much was exposed during the pandemic. They would never try and get away with that kind of disgusting global corruption again, would they? Well, maybe, because they probably think they got away with it to some degree last time. Let's look at the character of Bobby Kennedy. Let's look at what his example reveals and exposes about other apparently moral politicians like Bernie Sanders, who in the confirmation hearing was exposed as a hypocrite and potential ludicrous curmudgeon. That's my... You endorse this onesie? Do you endorse this onesie? Did you crap in the gusset of this onesie? No, that's Joe Biden sniffing at the gussets. Let's start by looking at Piers and Tucker.
Now, where I was completely wrong was, you mentioned COVID. And it was interesting. It really changed my thinking about these things. In COVID, I got very, overly emotionally engaged because I knew people who were dying of COVID.
Of or with?
And it was awful. And in Britain, we handled it very badly. But I got led down a line which I wish I hadn't been led down. I'll give an example. When the scientists said, if you have the vaccine, you can't transmit the virus, I believed them. And I became wrongly censorious, really badly censorious. I was saying to people, if you don't have it now, knowing that if you have it, you can't transmit the virus, you're going to go and kill old people, you're going to kill people. It's not about you, it's about the people you may infect and kill.
It's an interesting moral idea. It's not about you. Who is it about then? Who do you grant that moral authority to? I would absolutely love to have a conversation with Piers Morgan about all of that. And the key point, I think, when you issue a mea culpa is to immediately consider, what am I doing now that's like what I was doing then? Is there anything that I'm advocating for now or suggesting that people be compliant about now or endorsing an agenda that's beneficial to the mainstream now in the same way that I was then? And what would I be saying now were it not for intrepid independent media journalism that revealed the true nature of COVID? I'm talking about Jay Bhattacharya, thankfully at the NIH, and people like Joe Rogan, who showcased figures like Peter McCulloch and Robert Malone and Marty Makary, all names that we know now that were on the right side of science and the right side of history. But above all of those names is Bobby Kennedy, because Bobby Kennedy has moved from being a cultural figure to being a political figure. He potentially, as head of the HHS, will be able to control, curtail, crush the kind of pharmaceutical power that led to the revelation of that corruption. That was not the first time that Big Pharma had been deceptive and exploitative. The opioid crisis wasn't the first time. The out-of-court settlements with Johnson & Johnson weren't the first time. The reason that I didn't trust the pharmaceutical industry from the beginning was because they're the pharmaceutical industry. And the reason that I'm excited about Bobby Kennedy is because someone that's more overtly condemnatory of pharmaceutical companies than any of us is about to be in a position where they can confront corporate globalist power.
And it turned out to be completely wrong. They later said, months and months later, actually, there's no difference whether you have the vaccine or not in terms of transmitting the virus.
Yeah, they actually never clinically trialed it for transmission. So it's far worse than that.
And at that point, I realized I'd been misled completely.
Well, Piers Morgan may have issued a mea culpa, but the legacy media machine at large is doubling down on its position. Here, Scott Gottlieb is bought out on some legacy media conduit of claptrap to claim that Bobby Kennedy should be feared, loathed, despised, that he drinks milkshakes made out of baby hawk's eggs, that he lives in a nest, that he straps whales to his car, that he once ate a duck's dick. I mean, they're always making outrageous claims about this guy's lifestyle, instead of focusing on the fact that he called out Fauci when everyone else was like, oh, Fauci, it's okay to find this little gnome cute.
Joining us now is Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He is former FDA commissioner and a CNBC contributor. And Dr. Gottlieb.
That's it. And I don't want you to think about anything else. Oh, yeah, he's also on the board at Pfizer. Wait a minute. On the board at Pfizer. Pfizer make vaccines. Pfizer benefited during the pandemic. It was a real boon time for them. I'm supposed to be being objective. I've just introduced him without mentioning perhaps the most significant fact about him. I mean, like, if you now, today, introduced Jeffrey Epstein and said, I've got Jeffrey Epstein with me to talk about sex trafficking. Jeffrey Epstein's a very influential man who's friends with lots of guys in high places. You didn't say, also, we think that maybe he's a deep state operative who's being used to sexually compromise famous people and politicians. You wouldn't be giving Jeffrey Epstein a thorough enough intro, would you? So introducing Scott Gottlieb without saying he's on the board at Pfizer amounts to lying by omission. Wouldn't you agree? Let me know in the comments and chat.
Contributor. And Dr. Gottlieb, what was your reaction to what you heard in these confirmation hearings so far?
Here's that guy from the Police Academy movies that does all of the noises. You know, the tall black guy. What do you think about it? Like, all you want from the tall black guy from the Police Academy movies is them impressions. That's it. You don't get him on. So you don't get Scott Gottlieb on and not say he works for Pfizer, do you? 1775. Did you know that drinking 2 to 3 cups of coffee daily can reduce your risk of death by 29%? No! And halve your chances of heart complications? No! But what's the point if your coffee tastes like it was brewed by someone who thinks soy lattes are the pinnacle of human achievement? 1775 Coffee is here to reclaim coffee from the wokerati. Hand-picked Bolivian beans. Don't be disgusting. That is not a euphemism for, flicking your old. Roasted in the USA, delivering pure single-origin brilliance without a hint of deceit. Every dollar you spend enters you to win a blacked-out 2024 Tesla Cybertruck plus $30,000 of cash. Head to 7075. Yes, a Cybertruck, a modern-day Ark, ready to navigate the floods of uncertainty. Is this a metaphor? Was the Ark a metaphor? With the strength to carry you through any of life's trials. Head to 1775coffee.com, stock up and fuel your mornings with rebellion. Use this code for 15% off. Don't miss your chance to drive off in a Cybertruck.
Well, look, I don't think we learned a lot of things that are new that we didn't already know about his candidacy for this position. From the standpoint of those who've harbored concerns, I think that there are some really clear risks that could flow from his views on particularly vaccines and public health issues more generally. He wouldn't commit to saying that there are any safe vaccines that children should get. He just said he would look at the science.
Yeah, that's good. That's good, isn't it? You will look at the science, and if the science proves that there are some vaccines children will get, he will endorse them. What's wrong with that? Well, no, I like to, first what I do when conducting science is I look at my paycheck from Pfizer, and then I decide what to do after that. Pfizer, give me money. Gottlieb like money. Gottlieb used money for hair gel and to dress as modern-day Eddie Munster. He needs the check from Pfizer. Give your kids vaccines. That's science. Not this crazy crap that hawk egg eating bear strapping to car croaky voice motherfuckers doing. Show me the science. And a check from Pfizer.
Suggesting that the science around vaccines like polio and MMR isn't settled. He was given multiple opportunities to say that vaccines don't cause autism. And he punted every time. He didn't want to answer that question and didn't want to assert that there is any vaccine, and the MMR vaccine in particular, that doesn't cause autism.
Perhaps that's because there's been no significant evidence that demonstrates no causal link. Whilst there is no scientific evidence that demonstrates a causal link, that might be in some part because the pharmaceutical industry are not hugely invested in running clinical trials that compromise their profits. A bit like, I don't know, Scott Gottlieb, who's not keen on going on the news and saying things like, I work for Pfizer, I'm so invested in Pfizer doing well that I can't even think straight. Scott, tell me, should children get vaccines? Well, I'd never lie to you. Pfizer to you. I'd never lie to your Pfizer. Sorry, why do I keep saying Pfizer? Maybe it's because my whole life depended on Pfizer.
Autism. I think the other thing that became clear from these hearings, both before the Senate Help Committee as well as the Senate Finance Committee, he testified before both committees, is that he doesn't have a really deep understanding of the programs that he's going to administer. He confused Medicare and Medicaid. He didn't know what dual eligibles are, which are people who are dually eligible for both Medicare.
I know it. I should be in charge. Why don't you give me a job? I'm ever so clever. I've never eaten a baby hawk's egg. I've never strapped a whale to the top of my head. You couldn't, it's so greasy. Looks like it's got whale blubber all over my head. Listen, pick me, teacher, pick me. I'm ever so smart.
And Medicaid, he didn't know how those programs operated from the standpoint of how they dispersed money.
I know how it disperses money. I go get a job at Pfizer. It disperses money all over me. I wipe that money off of myself and carry on with my day.
Between the federal government and the states. He also confused Medicare Part A, Part B, Part C, and Part D.
He doesn't even know the alphabet. How can you trust a man on the subject of vitamin D who doesn't know his ABCs?
At one point, he was asked what Medicare Part A does, and he says it pays for physicians. That's not true. It pays for hospitals.
It also says here that when he was a little boy, he picked up the back legs of his dog and pushed him around like a vacuum cleaner.
These are just fundamental questions about the structure of the programs that he's going to be charged with administering that he should know. So beyond just his hesitancy around asserting that vaccines are safe and that there's any vaccine that children should go out and get.
Scott, can I ask you something? Yeah? Do you work for a vaccine company? No.
And the final point was that when he was asked multiple times about the safety of childhood immunizations, he said that if the science is sufficient to demonstrate that they're safe and effective, he would recommend them, which more than suggests that he doesn't believe that there's sufficient science right now to recommend that any child get.
If only there was some way to get sufficient science, like, I don't know, clinical trials. Funded by and organised by the taxpayer and carried out by the NIH with new objectivity under Jay Bhattacharya. Wouldn't that be a crazy thing to do? So beyond Scott Gottlieb's presumably financially incentivised fealty to Pfizer, a pharmaceutical company that makes vaccines, are there any other things we should consider? Yes, the Senate hearing itself was carried out by a bunch of cronies, a significant portion of whom are in the hock and pocket of pharmaceutical companies. Even supposed and lauded political figures like Bernie Sanders, who in 2015-16 was regarded as a sort of potential Trump of the left, a kind of curmudgeonly anti-corporate, anti-big business, anti-bank, pro-Occupy, pugilistic radical with the voice of Larry David but the heart of a lion. It turns out now that he is participating in the RFK takedown when he shouldn't be talking about stuff like that because, in spite of what he says, he might like them Pfizer bucks himself.
I'm going to make America healthier than other countries in the world right now.
Will you guarantee do what every other major country does? That's a simple question.
And by the way, Bernie, the problem of corruption is not just in the federal agencies, it's in Congress too. Almost all the members of this panel are accepting, including yourself, are accepting millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
Oh, no.
Protecting their interests.
Do you denounce this onesie? This onesie, I put it to you, has risen like a zombie onesie from the grave and will horrify us all. It will cause mass polio and MMR, and I have never took a pretty penny piece from Big Pharma.
Oh, I thought that would go. No. I ran for president like you. I got millions and millions of contributions. They did not come from the executives, not one nickel of PAC money.
Truth is, Bernie Sanders could, like RFK, have left the Democrat Party that seems to be captured and co-opted by globalists and donor class and the donor class that seems to me to be, if you want a living synecdoche of its morals, is a kind of Nancy Pelosi party, very good on the rhetoric, even better when it comes to spinning the wheel at the stock market. An organisation that wants to simultaneously be lauded for its morality while profiting from its position. A nihilistic morass of broken political ideals, completely directionless and with nowhere to go. And I'd be thankful for its implosion and decline were it not for the fact that the set of interests that are broadly represented by these centre-left entities still continue apace to garner political influence and power. Can you believe that, in spite of everything we've learned, the WEF are still trying to implement biannual mRNA vaccine programs?
Looking forward, there's just a profusion of really exciting technologies across all three diseases.
His whole posture and vibe is an indication that he's got the wrong mindset. There's some really exciting things going on in mRNA. Let me talk to you like he's Barry White of vaccines. Okay, I'm going to tell you, there's some vaccines coming out for polio now, ladies, that are going to, oh man, measles, mumps, and rubella. Oh, we're going to chase them out of your veins. We're going to be rich.
It's the one that is probably the most exciting, is the emergence of long-acting injectable PrEP. It's a bit of a mouthful. Effectively what it is, if you're looking at it from a patient perspective as opposed to a scientific perspective.
I think we've had enough of people not looking at things from scientific perspectives, haven't we? All this madness and lying and moralising and manipulating and implementing plans for mass citizen management and population control and big one world governments that can, at a moment's notice, social credit score you out of existence or smear you or shut you down if you're a dissenter. Let's get back to the science.
Is it's functionally equivalent to a short-acting, 100% effective vaccine. You take it every 6 months. This is a drug called the lenacapavir, and it is incredibly effective.
And there, just for one final time, note the way that the semicircle passes through the 3 zeros to form 666, the number of the beast. There you have it. The Democrat Party may have imploded and the pandemic may be over, but it's the chief beneficiary of the pandemic period, RFK, remains important, and by my reckoning at least, the canary in the mine of whether or not this new government is going to implement the policies for which it received such an astonishing mandate at the last election. Bobby Kennedy, I contest, is the most significant political figure of our current moment if you are genuinely radical. Elon Musk, of course, has more influence. Trump may have more razzmatazz and more power, but if you want to understand anti-corporatism and what was revealed in that dreadful incubation of the pandemic period, Bobby Kennedy is the political figure that you should be looking to use the levers of power in a novel and radical way. But that's just what I think. Why don't you let me know what you think in the comments and chat? Remember, we stream every day, Monday to Friday. Big interviews, our Oracle show, available every Thursday. And on Break Bread with Russell Brand, I talk to Christians about Christian matters, whether that's theologian Wesley Huff or Tucker Carlson about their faith and their Christianity. Please become a member of Rumble Premium. It really helps me, but more important than any of that, if you can, please stay free. Hey, thanks for watching. If you want to see more uncensored content where free speech can flourish, join our live stream. Click the link right here to watch the next video if you want to, or become a member of a growing movement. Download the Rumble app and you'll be informed every time we make a new piece of content. Stay free.